one-man team. But whenever you're the food prepper, whenever you're the cook, whenever you're the mechanic, whenever you're the electrician, whenever you're the plumber, whenever you
come into the business and they're just looking
to get rich quick.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen as a food truck.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's where people...
It's a slow climb.
It's a misconception, right?
Yeah, huge misconception. I think that's where a lot of people... So many little minute things that you can do to make yourself stand out that a lot of food truckers take for granted.
Shit, he says.
Yeah, on IG.
Yeah. Like, talk your shit, bro. Talk your shit. Like, go for it. And I was like,
I'm not going to work with you because you're not going to tell me what my truck should look like or what I can and cannot do. Well, guess what? All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Failure's Not an Option podcast. This is our very first time being on air, so thank you so much. We're super excited to introduce you to ourselves and our podcast and what we want to talk about. So first of all, my name is Carlos Carrillo, and I am part of the Jark Food Group. We own and operate a few food trucks here in the metropolitan Tampa Bay area. I come from a retail background. I was born and raised in a small restaurant and went on to have a little bit of a retail career, worked for some really strong brands, and now I've had the opportunity to launch my own brand. And, I want to be able to share that with you guys, share some of the troubles and tribulations and some of the successes that we've had. And with me, I've got my two business partners. I've got Tomas Perez and Adam Hendricks, and together we run Jark Food Group, which, like I said, encompasses some of the area's top food trucks. And we also are childhood friends. So, who better to go in business with than people that are more like family than some actually family is. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves, and, we'll just talk. Our shows aren't scripted. We just, everything we talk about kind of comes naturally. We've got bullet points and stuff that we aim for, but at the end of the day, what we really want is organic conversation that hopefully somebody can take something from and apply it to their small business or to the idea of their small business. So
their food trucks.
Yeah. So with that, I'll introduce my lifelong friend and business partner, Tomas.
Yeah, so I am Tomas. I have 15 years of corporate credentials. I went from managing in the medical industry, give me that look, and 5 years of sales. So a lot of management is under my belt.
So Adam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Adam Hendricks. I've been a part of this now going on a year and a half. My background is retail for, the last 15 years as well. Carlos invited me into this business, knowing absolutely nothing, no experience, and that's one of the things that I think we were going to segue into is the experience piece, right? Is you really don't have to have experience to start a food truck.
But you got to know a little bit about everything.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, that's one of those things where, people come up to our trucks, come up to our windows, and they're used to cooking their meals in their home and stuff. And they're like, hey, I want to become a food trucker.
Yeah.
Until they actually become a food trucker.
Yeah.
But does that make you qualified?
No, absolutely not.
So what are the things that make you qualified to be a food trucker?
I don't know if there's any qualifications you really have to become a food trucker. At the end of the day, you got to be able to do everything, right? You got to be an accountant, you got to be a plumber, you got to be an electrician, you got to be a mechanic.
That was exactly what we hit on the other day.
So, you don't have to have qualification. If you got a lot of money, then you don't have to, because then you can just have people do that for you.
Sure.
But in the food truck business, you're not going to have a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your goal is when you come in. Like you said, a lot of people come into the business and they're just looking
to get rich quick.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen as a food truck.
No.
Absolutely not.
And I think that's where people...
It's a slow climb.
It's a misconception, right?
Yeah, huge misconception. I think that's where a lot of people fail.
It's literally you have to have some type of knowledge all around the board, because if you don't, you run into the issue, like we were discussing the other day, where you are going to be dishing out so much money on fixing things that you're never going to really see a profit.
Yeah, I was just thinking while we were talking, right? Like if we were to sit down and build a how-to binder, right? And what are the qualifications in bullet points to become a food truck owner, right?
For the individual.
For the individual. I think one would be capital.
Okay.
Yep.
The second one would be extremely hard work ethic.
Work ethic. Yep.
100%.
And then the third one would be able to manage through ambiguity.
Every
right?
day.
And then the other one would be
Troubleshooting.
troubleshooting.
It's
kind of
managing
goes.
ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other one is being extremely selfish. Right?
Selfish in what sense? What do you mean by selfish?
Selfish in the sense that you have to almost live and breathe the business of the food truck if you want it to be successful. So you're selfish in the way where you're gonna be selfish with your time with your family.
Yeah.
You're gonna be selfish with your time to your friends. You're gonna be selfish with your time to your wife. Like there's other things or other obligations you may have that you may have to turn down.
Yeah.
So you mean your friends and family would see you as selfish, but really you're unselfish because you're giving everything.
But you
to
would
the
have
business. You're making sacrifices in your personal life to make sure that the business succeeds.
But you would have to be selfish in the aspect of devoting your time to your business.
It's like tunnel vision. Like that's the only thing.
Yep.
You eat it, you breathe it, you sleep it, everything.
Yeah.
No, I would agree with that. I think that's the case in most businesses, especially when in year one, where most businesses fail. I don't know what the statistics are, but the majority of new ventures fail within the first 12 months, right? And I think with food trucks, that there's probably a multiplier in there. It's probably 2 to 3 times higher than most small businesses. And I think it's because most people don't realize what it takes to be successful in a food truck, right? So it's like what you were talking about before, Adam, where, a lot of the people that get into this industry are people who enjoy cooking at home as a hobby. They cook for their friends, they cook for their families, and they think that they can take that and apply it to a business model, and get that out on the road in a food truck. And it's really not that simple. I think food is a very, very small portion of what goes into being a successful food truck.
Extremely small.
Right. So food quality is important, right? You've got to have good food. If not, people don't come back. But the hardest thing about food trucking, or the biggest challenge, is actually getting customers to come to you for the first time, right? And you can't tell me that food has anything to do with that, right? If you look at it objectively,
because they've never tried it.
They've never had it. Right. So unless they've gone online and seen pictures or reviews or, videos, they have no idea what your food is like. Mm-hmm. And more of that online presence and all that, the videos and things like that, that's marketing. Right. So you've got to be a better marketer than you are a cook. And correct me if I'm wrong, especially if you're...
No, I think it's definitely a valid point. My initial food truck that I started out with, I'm pretty successful. From month 1 to month 9, we did about 93K,
right.
94K. And we were running at a capacity of probably like 3, max 4 days a week.
But you failed.
Yeah.
Why?
Partnership. And I think that was
business partnership. Okay.
I think that had a lot to do with me as well.
Okay. So let me simplify this for you. If you had to say 3 bullet points of why you failed initially as a food trucker, what would those 3 bullet points be? Now I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's all good. I think shared responsibility.
Okay. So in terms of what? The workload?
The workload.
So work ethic.
Work ethic.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So work ethic is 1. 2, the inability to want to make sacrifices in terms of changing what's not working. Right?
Yeah.
So you're not changing what isn't working. So in this case, it's very specific. You're talking about your menu, right? You're the person that you were in this food truck with, you were willing to make those changes. That person wasn't. So it contributed to the fact that the venture failed, not necessarily the concept, because I think you had a strong concept, right?
And to be honest with you,
and your food was great.
Yeah,
right.
It was definitely awesome. I mean, we were averaging 1,100 between 1,050 and 1,100 per shift, and I mean, if you
those
look
are
at
great numbers,
it's solid.
So we've got work ethic, not being open to change, and you have anything else that you think contributed to it?
Backup.
Because
whenever you're, I guess you could call it, and not per se just a one-man team, but whenever you're the food prepper, whenever you're the cook, whenever you're the mechanic, whenever you're the electrician, whenever you're the plumber, whenever you're the go-to, you're the shopper, right? Something as simple as going out and just doing the grocery shopping. Something as simple as just as simple as that. Like,
so having a well-rounded team
and time management.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Everything that we've built so far, we've built on what we've learned, right? So, and it's kind of something we're going through right now with the American concept, right? So just to give a little background, I launched Latin 3.5 years ago. 4.5 years ago. And one of the biggest things that has led to my success in the food truck industry is I don't stick with what's not working, right? So within the first year, my menu changed several times, and not to say my concept changed. So that it's very important that I distinguish that, because a lot of people think, hey, this isn't working, so we're going to go from a spaghetti and meatballs truck to a Latin truck, and then, well, the Latin truck's not working, so we're going to become a burger truck. Oh, well, the burger truck's not working, and all of a sudden you're $100,000 into it, you haven't made a profit, and you've changed the concept 3 times, and now you're done, right? So I don't think, when you focus on what's not working, you can't identify it as a branding issue or as an overall issue. Well, this isn't working, so let's just overhaul the whole thing, right? You kind of have to take a deeper dive into it. So with Latin, over the first 6 months, my menu changed 3 or 4 different times. And I originally started off as a Cuban sandwich truck based on a Tampa sandwich shop model, which in Tampa, sandwich shops are kind of like bodegas in New York City, right?
Yep.
Like they're on every corner. Yep. Everyone's got a Cuban sandwich. Everyone's got a steak sandwich, and those homemade sides and things like that. So I thought that was going to work on a food truck. And just because it works in a brick and mortar doesn't mean it translates to the road, especially when you're a mobile food truck. So, tacos were something that I never even thought I was going to do, even though I had a Latin food truck. It's just I'm Cuban, and Cubans don't eat tacos, right? But every time we worked a shift, a customer would come up and say, hey, like, what kind of tacos do you have? And I had to tell those customers we don't serve tacos. And it happened so frequently that I realized, hey, like, I am telling people no too much, too often. And I think we know that in retail, right? Like, no is almost like a bad word. Mm-hmm. Well, it should be in any industry, like the customer, you never want to put yourself in a position where you have to tell a customer no. Obviously, there are limitations to that. And I'm sure that we've all got stories to where,
to attest
the customer is not always right? But they are, right? Yeah. So, I made the necessary changes and adaptations to where we found success, and we found success consistently. And that's kind of what we're going through right now with American, where American, is a rebrand. So let's talk about Coco's Hibachi Grill, which we launched 1.5 years ago and shut down. Has it been 1.5 years? No. A year ago.
It was a year. It was a year to the day.
That we operated it.
Okay. We shut it down the day. No. It was like a week prior. But when we shut it down, we relaunched American the same exact day that we had launched Hibachi a year prior.
Yeah. Gotcha. So
it ran for 12 months.
Failed concept?
No, absolutely not.
So why?
I loved it.
I think when you say failed concept, like when you say failed concept, it's like
it's got a bad tone. It's got a bad ring to it.
It's not like it's a bad tone, because if we were in a
but it was successful.
It was. If we were in a different time, or if we had a different setup, I believe that Hibachi can come back.
Okay.
What kind of setup? What do you mean by setup?
The thing with Hibachi is what drained us was the labor. it was truly a labor of love truck, because every morning, every day, vegetables had to be cut fresh, meat had to be cut fresh, rice had to be made fresh. So every day it was just this mountain of a labor list that had to be done just to get the truck out the gates every day. Yeah. And I think that's initially what led to us saying, hey,
it's not working.
This is not working
for us.
This cannot work long term, right? Like, we cannot continue to operate like this. And also, I think the other caveat to that with the hibachi grill is we pigeonholed ourselves into just one concept corner. Like we had no wiggle room, right? We had no wiggle room, and it was hard for us, especially like with caterings and stuff like that, because a lot of people that want caterings are on budgets, right? And I get it. Like, if I'm looking, to cater a lunch for my company, you're gonna look for the best deal that you can get. Yeah. And while our truck was always the first truck that people went to hey, we really want your truck here, this is our budget, it was extremely hard for us to try to make their budget work and the truck remain profitable, because with hibachi, and that's the thing, is that truck ran traditional hibachi, right? Steak, shrimp, and chicken, right?
And good steak.
And then all your veggies.
Right. It wasn't
and
like
your rice and noodles. Like, there was, this is not an Asian cuisine truck. Like, there was no orange chicken or bourbon
There's no
chicken.
fusion.
Yeah,
right?
There's no fusion. So, and even if you add fusion, you're still at a point where I don't think that price point would be something that companies would come for catering, because it's expensive to operate that truck.
So what are we talking price point wise?
For,
I don't know, for a catering, traditional catering, for food trucks, a lot of food trucks that I see out there.
It would be like 13 to 15 is, I think, your traditional catering.
I think a lot of food trucks are priced that way in our market.
Yeah, 13 to 15. And that's the problem, is if you wanted to go 13 to 15 with hibachi truck, you're going to get chicken and rice.
Chicken or veggies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's what you're getting.
Gotcha.
And that's not a lot of options for everybody.
Right.
No, it's not.
So it doesn't really appeal to everybody. And that's the thing, is we would go to some of these caterings where these companies would choose us anyways. And it would be people that we also service in their communities, or they have seen us
and they're looking for the
rallies,
same menu that they have at their
to say,
community.
hey, where's the steak? Or, hey, where's the chicken? Or where's the crab rangoons?
And we're running a limited menu.
And we don't have it, because this is the budget. This is the menu that your company chose. And I think that's where our problem came in. We had no flexibility of doing say a breakfast or a brunch, or going to car shows or going to markets, because our price point for that cuisine type was so high, and it just didn't pan out. And you also got to remember too is,
well, I don't think anybody wants hibachi for breakfast anyway, right?
No, absolutely not. Unless they're going to pick the eggs, they're going to pick the eggs out of our rice. But I think you also have to remember too, it's the long game. You are constantly playing the long game with this.
Right.
It's never a get rich quick. It's never $1 million overnight. You always have to look to the future when you're doing these things. And I think that's where we kind of misstepped in creating Coco's Hibachi Grill. Is we misstepped on the point of how far is this truck really going?
We went into expert mode.
It's a niche. The problem is it's a niche cuisine type.
Absolutely.
So when you're looking at when you're in the planning stages for launching a new truck, whether it's your first truck or your fifth truck. And, for us, it was our second truck. But I think it's important to identify a concept that's going to give you flexibility, right? And I think that's what we did, the second time around when we revisited branding hibachi and we made it an American cuisine truck. We didn't say, hey, we're going to be a gourmet burger truck. Right? We didn't say we're going to be Coco's Gourmet Burgers, right? Because that kind of gets us where we already were. It boxes you into, okay, now you've got, a 30-foot truck rolling down the road that says Coco's Burger Truck, and that's all you can really serve. I mean, yeah, you can have variations and you can add a few things to the menu, but you can't get away from burgers. Right. And that's why when we branded, we went with Coco's American Cuisine, which to the customer, doesn't scream burgers, but it also doesn't force you into a specific cuisine type or doesn't pigeonhole you like you were saying before. So on the burger truck, even though we launched with burgers, a month and a half, 2 months ago, we've now got Philly cheesesteak sandwiches,
which are a smash.
Yeah, and they're selling almost as much as the burgers are. We've got grilled chicken sandwiches. We've got
shrimp
po' boy.
Yeah, shrimp po' boys.
Yeah, so
and the menu is going to keep evolving, continue to change. So,
and that's the thing. You keep changing and you keep swapping things out until you find sustained success.
Yeah,
right. And then you don't stop there either. Right now, you found what works. How do we perfect it? How do we make it to where?
How do you elevate it?
Right. How do we make it to where it's profitable?
Yeah.
Right. It's consistent. You're able to find ways to do things cheaper. So you don't want to necessarily water down the product, right? But if there's more efficient ways of executing that menu item to where you're saving time or saving money or saving both, that's going to make you even more successful.
Let's say less expensive.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about the major corporations that are out there,
efficiencies are at the top of the list.
Yeah, so like Apple every year they launch an iPhone, right? And they usually keep that iPhone in their lineup for a couple of years, right? So like right now, the 14's out, or are we in the 13?
14. Yeah, it's 14.
You're in the 14, right? But you can still buy an iPhone 12. Apple will still sell you an iPhone 12. And the reason they do that is because as time goes on, it becomes cheaper for them to manufacture that same item. So our industry is no different. So, you've got to keep looking for ways of doing things and saving money on the back end, or changing the way that you put things together, or just the labor aspect of it to be able to enhance your profits, right, without diminishing your product.
Absolutely. It's innovation. It's constant innovation.
Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether you're creating an iPhone or creating a chicken sandwich. The innovation has to continue to be there.
Right.
It has to continue to progress. And it's not just making a chicken sandwich, right? The innovation is your food truck.
Right.
So
or the equipment.
How are you continuing to innovate yourself, right? And I think that's where a lot of places now that we're in 2023, the COVID years that we had really jump-started, jolted, emergency paddles to the chest for companies to figure out what can I do and how can I move forward before I close my doors. And I think that's where social media and stuff started taking off with Facebook and TikTok and all that stuff started going crazy.
That's where food trucks busted off too, because nobody wanted to see. You couldn't go and sit down in a restaurant.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But what can I do?
Absolutely.
Well, I can go to a food truck. And I can go pick up food and eat gourmet or a home cooked meal, something that's good. In the pleasure of my own home. You can't go to the movie.
I mean, that's where All About Food Trucks was essentially started.
Was born, yeah. So I think COVID put food trucks on stage in a way that we never had that kind of exposure.
COVID set the bar.
Especially in cities where food trucks weren't that big.
Right.
Like when you think of food trucks, you think of like
Tampa,
Philadelphia. No, I'm saying like before.
Yeah.
Right. When you think of food trucks,
Tampa, like food trucks were not big in Tampa.
No, absolutely not. But like when you think of food trucks, it's New York, it's Philadelphia, it's Detroit, it's like
Seattle,
right?
California, LA. I mean, all probably the biggest market in the country.
Where they're just lined up on the side of the roads downtown and stuff.
Austin, sorry, not Houston, but Austin. My buddy lived in Austin for a year.
Austin's a huge market.
As I was starting and initiating everything, he was calling me every day. He's like, dude, this is crazy. But that's the thing, is that food trucks ended up setting the bar for these restaurants. I went to, I'm not going to say the name of it, but you guys know where I went. Major burger spot.
Okay.
Major burger restaurant. I was so disappointed. Literally, because, and not like, oh my God, that our trucks are so great and phenomenal, but we take and put in a lot of work and efforts into those things to perfect them.
Well, it's a different industry. And I think that's where people kind of miss the mark or don't realize. People don't realize that the restaurant industry and the food truck industry are completely different and separate industries. And I didn't realize that. So when I got into food trucking, I come from a family who has owned small sandwich shops and small restaurants my entire life. Like I joke with people all the time and say I was born with a Cuban sandwich in my hand because that's how my parents made money. That's how my family made money. And when I wanted to get into food trucking and I was exploring it, I thought it was going to be such a natural progression just to jump on a food truck and pump out food. And I got a rude awakening because it's just two completely different, separate industries. And what works in a brick and mortar doesn't always translate onto wheels. And I think that the same goes the opposite way as well. So what works on a food truck may not work in a restaurant. So, you're talking about going to a burger spot and being disappointed, and you've got to think, like, depending on the size of that restaurant, a lot of that stuff is mass produced. A lot of that stuff comes in frozen or it's processed. And when we're in a food truck and you're packing for small events, small shifts, and when I say small shifts, I mean that in a relative way, right? So when you think about these major restaurants and chains, they're doing 300-400 tabletops a night, right? Whereas in a food truck, you're going to average, between 50 and 100 tickets on a regular shift. I'm not talking about festivals or large events. I'm talking about a regular shift, right?
I was going to say we put up 400 plus,
right? But you're looking at
at some events.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are huge events, right? But for your normal everyday shifts, you have the unique ability that restaurants don't to make everything from scratch, right? Or make the majority of your menu from scratch. You don't want to make everything from scratch because we experienced that with hibachi. But you are able to focus on some of the minute details that you can't really do when you have a high volume restaurant, right? You've got to be able to sacrifice things in a high volume restaurant that we don't necessarily have to sacrifice on food trucks. So when you're talking about freshness and you're talking about quality and you're talking about things that are made to order, you're going to get that every time from a food truck. You're not going to get that every time from a restaurant. Especially during peak times. Like you go into a restaurant at peak times and they're busting out orders, and half of the time their orders are sitting under a heat lamp before they come to the table because they're making those orders. They're making their top sellers ahead of time. On a food truck, we don't have a way of keeping food hot, right? So we have to wait until it's ordered. So that means every order is truly being made to order. It's a fresh order that's custom to that customer at the window.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And that it definitely drives the difference.
Yeah, it's a huge selling point whenever we're selling caterings to clients, especially corporate clients where they've had traditional catering over the years. That's one of the things that give us that competitive advantage to where, they ask, hey, what can you do for us different than what like an Outback Steakhouse or a Carrabba's or another chain restaurant can do? And that selling point is, hey, we're making every order on site fresh. So you're not getting a delivery in a van coming out of a Cambro that they're just rolling in food, right?
And setting down. How about can we talk about what's called clean serve?
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't have to worry about picking up trash, putting things to the side, staying on top of people and this, that, and the other. No, listen, we have our own trash cans. But it's something that's very simple. We have our own way of serving it to the customer to where it's not a mess.
No, it's full service. So, and it's not full service in a way of like restaurant where you're getting a waitress or, a hostess sitting you down and you're not getting that kind of full service. But when you sign up for a food truck for a corporate event or a birthday or a wedding or whatever it is, most of the food trucks are completely self-sustained, right? So they've got their own water source, their own power source, all of the food is on the truck. But you're paying for a complete package. Like the truck rolls in, serves all of your guests, everything's fresh, everything's made to order. And then at the end of the event, everything's cleaned up and the food truck rolls out. And as a host or as an event planner or an organizer, what could be better than that?
Literally say it, because you're losing, if not, you're losing your deposits because the place was a mess, because your party did.
When you're renting a venue.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it makes a huge difference,
That's one of the reasons why I think food truck weddings are so popular now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like that's the new thing.
And as an organizer, I have the benefit of going out and not only offering one food truck, but I can offer, a variety. Some of Tampa's best food is on wheels. So I've got 50 partner trucks that I can bring to a client and say, hey, I know that you've been looking at this chain restaurant or that chain restaurant or this catering company, but I've got 50 different concepts that I can show you.
Over 20 different cuisines.
That you can choose from, right? So, as an organizer, and that's one of the benefits too of working with organizers is your truck gets exposure that it wouldn't normally get. And I know that a lot of trucks are against working with organizers, right? Thankfully, I've modeled all about food trucks and my partner Ryan have modeled all about food trucks in a different way because I was a food trucker before I was an organizer. We try to be as fair and as transparent as possible. We look out for trucks, right? The trucks that we work with, which we get to choose. We don't work with every truck. And I think that gives us a competitive advantage too. And it gets us some hate. Especially in our market.
There's always a good and a bad.
Yeah, there's always positives and negatives, but we hand select the trucks that we work with, and we're able to present those trucks to clients that wouldn't normally book a food truck. And let me tell you why. Because a lot of food truck owners will say, well, if bookers didn't exist, then clients would just book with us directly, and that's not always true. Especially when you're talking about corporate clients. And there's one reason for that, one main reason, and it's liability, right? So as a food trucker, you carry insurance, right? But at the end of the day, our insurance policies are $1 million, $2 million, right? If something catastrophic were to happen, which it doesn't happen all the time, it's probably not frequent, it's more of a rarity, but it still happens. There's food truck accidents out there all the time. And if something were to happen, your $1 million or your $2 million doesn't go very far, especially in today's day and age. So organizers or corporations, now there's a middleman, and that middleman carries the liability. So that middleman, if something were to happen, you've got your insurance as a food truck owner, but we've got an additional umbrella policy, and there's someone that those victims are able to sue that's not the corporation. So, and that's why corporations are more likely to work with a booker or an organizer than they are an individual food truck because of the liability piece. Not to mention, food truckers are incredibly hard to get a hold of. I know that I don't answer my food truck phone a lot of the times. I'll answer my organizer phone before I answer my food truck phone because, the organizer phone is more important to me. But as a food truck owner, how many things are more important to you than answering the phone? There's a lot of things that come on that list, especially during a shift or during preparation for a shift. Like the last thing you're worried about is, who's calling. Right. So on the other end of that line, you've got clients that are trying to book food for an event. And sometimes those events are very last minute. We get client calls all the time on a Tuesday looking for a food truck for Friday. And they're scrambling, calling all these different trucks, and no one's answering the phone, at least not in a timely manner. And the trucks that are already booked, or their minimums are not consistent with what the industry minimums are, or they just can't handle the volume. There's a lot of different reasons, but there's pros and cons to working with organizers. At the end of the day, as an individual food truck owner, you get to choose whether you want to or not. But I, in the times where I was not an organizer and I was just a food truck owner, I had a very, very beneficial relationship with one of the area's largest organizers. And it was mutually beneficial, right? So I got work from them. I was, probably one of their favored trucks. But they got a benefit. Their benefit was that they knew that they can count on me to serve a consistent product. My truck was clean. We were professionals. We showed up and made their job easy and made them look good, right, to the client. So And that's why we choose which food trucks to work with and with which food trucks not to work with.
And there's a lot of food truckers that have the same conversation with everybody and say, man, you know what? I don't want to give up that 10 or 15%. I just don't want to do it. I'd rather book it on my own or do this on my own. And something that me personally, I took that into account as within my budget. Because I'd rather pay the 10% or the 15% booking fee, whatever, or however you want to categorize it.
Yeah, I think 10% is an industry standard.
10% is an industry standard.
But think about it from more than just a booking fee. They're marketing. You guys are doing the marketing.
Yeah,
you guys
absolutely.
are doing the setting up,
the paperwork.
You guys are doing okay. I have to send you my COI.
Yeah, I'm paying 10% for somebody to find me my work,
and I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
Not every truck is, though. And there are a lot of trucks that are successful. But there are plenty of trucks that are successful, even in our market, that are successful, and they don't work with any organizers. You've got to have almost a dedicated person to find that work for you, or you're not answering your phone. It's you can't do it all. Why do you work with All About Food Trucks, or why do you choose to work with these companies that are stealing work from us?
For me personally, it's a little bit different, I think, because for me personally, my response is always going to be, one, they find my work. Two, it's good, proven work, because if you're a good organizer, you're not going to hold on to things that are not producing, right? So you're not going to continue to book trucks or schedule trucks at a community that's only doing $250. So at least I know going in that the quality of work that I'm going to get from this organizer is going to be
worth the 10%.
Yeah, it's going to be worth my 10%.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and the relationship that you build off of that, like I said, it's all an end game. Yeah. It's all an end game. You have to continue to look to the future. Because if you're working with one of the biggest organizers in your area, right? Or if you're working with two, because in our market, there's two, right? There's technically three if you go to the one over the bridge, but there's two in our direct market that we work with.
They provide quality work.
Yeah. If you continue to work with those two, like, they're filling 30 to 40% of your schedule for one. For one thing, right? So that's 30 to 40% of your work you already know is guaranteed for the month. Right. So now you only got to go find the other half of that, depending on how much more you want to work. Do you only want to work 80? So now you only got to go find 40% more of your
Well, and it depends if you're a top truck, too.
And if you're
a top 10 truck,
if you're a top 10 truck,
the organizers can fill your schedule.
Yeah, you're getting more than that. And then on top of that, though, if you're a top 10 truck or you're a sought after truck, now you're getting put in front of bigger clients, like you're getting put in front of the HCAs, or you're getting put in front of the TGHs,
or the NFL,
or the NFLs,
MLB,
or the rowdy soccer, or like you said with the NFL, you're getting put out there at the Bucks training camp.
And it's not even about being put in front of those clients or in front of the clients of these organizers, but it's all of the attendees that are there too. Because many times,
it's all about relationships.
Right. Many times, like I've worked caterings for these organizers, and I've gotten 2 or 3 caterings from some of those jobs.
Absolutely.
Where I was booked directly, not by their client, but by attendees that have come to that event. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So,
this business is all about networking and making connections.
And putting your product in front of as many people
as possible,
as you can. So,
and that's one of the things too that I think a lot of food truck owners fail to realize or don't take into account, that just because you got a crappy catering, right? Or a small catering. I'm going to say crappy, but say a small catering.
Well, no caterings are crappy.
Of course, because it's guaranteed money. It's guaranteed money. But you get a catering for, say, 50 people or 30 people.
Right.
But,
and it's $800 or whatever the case may be.
But what if that 30 to 50 person catering is for the Bucks?
Right.
Or what if that 30 to 50 catering is for, say, Tico?
Right.
It's all about building that network and continuing to grow your brand. And like you said, it's getting your food and your face and your brand in front of as many people as possible.
Right.
Branding plays a huge factor.
Yeah. So why
Absolutely, and that's one of the things I think that you were trying to segue into.
Yeah.
Is it's not the food that's on the truck, because like you said, like people don't even know what kind of food you have yet, or they've never tried your food, so they don't know if it's good or bad. So what draws them to your truck?
Marketing, or not marketing, but branding. So
marketing, branding, and it's how you present yourself, or how you present yourself amongst your peers.
What your truck looks like.
Yeah, amongst your peers.
Right.
There's so many little minute things that you can do to make yourself stand out that a lot of food truckers take for granted.
Yeah, they don't see the value in it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
like
something as small as lights on top of the truck,
Dude,
or lights
I got
underneath
stopped,
the truck.
Broski, I got stopped the other day at a stoplight. Ask Anita.
Yep.
She will tell you. This guy came up, pulled up next to me, young cat. It was like, I don't know, probably like maybe 21, 22, something like that. And he was all gas, no brakes. Bro, that truck is so dope, this, that, and the other. Like, I ain't seen a truck like that. And I don't think ever, bro, I'm at a stoplight and he's like, promo, put me on camera. Like, bro, talk your shit, he says.
Yeah, on IG.
Yeah. Like, talk your shit, bro. Talk your shit. Like, go for it. And I was like, at that moment, those are the times to shine. Like, it's captivating.
Yeah. So I think it goes into like, how do you show up, right? What does your truck look like not only when you're parked next to another truck, right? Because that's really when you want to shine. When you're parked, when you're at a food truck rally or you're at an event and there's several vendors out there and you want to be able to stand out, right? But it's not just about that. It's what do you look like when you're parked on your own in front of an HOA or a community or a corporate building, right? Is your truck clean? Does it look good? Do you clean your coolers? Do you clean your menu boards? Right.
Listen to me, bro. It's the little things.
No, absolutely.
Like, he
is your trash can clean? Is your trash can out?
Right. And those are the things that as a business owner, you have to be the one to see that, because your employees, it doesn't matter what you pay them. It goes back to that ownership piece, right? But your employees they're not going to be as engaged as you are. So it's very important that, you're paying attention to those details, because those details add up.
Yeah.
All those little things add up to a big thing, right? So we come from corporate America. We come from a retail background. And in retail, you've got checklists. There's checklists for everything, right? Why do you think those checklists exist? And,
standards.
Right. And you want to be able to meet those standards and exceed those standards. And a lot of people get out of corporate America and go into food trucking. We see it all the time. And they want to get away from structure. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make as a business owner or as a new business owner.
I think that's what helped me out.
Well, structure is what makes you successful. Like, these companies didn't become successful by accident. Sometimes there's right place, right time, but you can't repeat that. That's not repeatable, right? So what is repeatable is consistency and building processes and operations that make you more consistent, right? So when you think about these establishments, and let's talk about food, right? So when you think about the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the Chick-fil-A's, like, all of these places are successful because there's structure. There's checklists that their team goes through each and every day, right? There's standards, right? I can't tell you how many times we hear, as an organizer, I hear, well, I'm not going to work with you because you're not going to tell me what my truck should look like or what I can and cannot do. Well, guess what, buddy? Like, the clients that I am presenting you to, I am promising them a certain level of professionalism. I am promising them a certain level of expectation. I am promising them a complete product. And if you can't hold up your end of the bargain, if you can't run a clean truck who's proficient, who can pump food out, who's got high quality food, then you can't work with me as an organizer. And you shouldn't be in business.
And you shouldn't, on the flip side of that, you shouldn't be sorry.
No,
about those
I'm not sorry about it. I'm not. And, there's a lot of trucks in our market that
don't understand the being unapologetic.
Right. Right. And it's not an arrogance piece. And I think a lot of the times the people that know me personally know that I am not an arrogant individual, but I do have very high expectations out of me, out of myself, and out of anyone that I work with,
100%.
right? And that's not only at the partner. We're not talking about the partnership at this table, but I'm talking about my partnership of the 50 trucks that I help find work for, right? If I send you out in front of a client, like, you've got to know and you've got to understand that I have very high expectations of what that shift looks like, right? From your arrival time, being there, 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour before your shift begins, to how your truck runs through that shift, to your customer service. Because even though that's my client, you're interacting with it. You are the face of my company when you're out working a location, right? So that customer service, it can't just be, oh, well, you got to talk to Carlos about that. No, like, if there's an issue on site, figure it out and then circle back around with me, right? Obviously, if it's an issue that is outside of the scope of what a food truck would normally do,
I don't think the disclaimer was needed, but
give me a phone
it's
call.
good. Yeah.
Right, but the level of service and the expectations that we have for our partner trucks as an organizer, I think every truck should have those standards and those expectations of themselves, whether they work with an organizer or not. Because that's
I agree.
That's what makes you successful.
But doesn't that come from an individual? Like, can we talk about the things that you can't teach versus the things that you can?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you can't teach somebody
work ethic,
morals and ethics.
Yeah, you can't.
Right.
You either got it or you don't.
Right. Because in the back of your mind, right, whomever the individual is, in the back of your mind, it's like, either you're a good person, you're good-hearted, and you understand, and you can kind of go through the ups and downs and kind of figure things out, or you just can't because you just don't really care. It's like, I like it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, work ethic is one of the things, and I think we've touched on it a few times already, that you can't afford not to have in this industry.
100%.
And I think that people see the finished product. Whenever they show up to an event and they eat from your food truck, they buy something from your food truck, or they show up and there's 10 food trucks out there, and they're having a good time. They see the finished product. That's the finished product. They don't see that food truck to work a 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. shift has been at it since 6 a.m., right? They don't see that all of that food that's being served had to be prepared.
In 3 to 4 minutes.
Had to be prepared, right? It doesn't magically, the magic food truck fairy doesn't just show up and load up your truck, right? That is countless hours of work. And depending on your cuisine type, it could be a lot of work, right? We saw that with hibachi, and there's a lot of cuisine types out there that require so much work, and the food, the processes that go into making some of this food can take hours. Like, let's talk about barbecue, right? So,
that's a labor of love,
right? So barbecue trucks have it easy, right? They show up and they're scooping, and that's it, right? The food's ready. Yeah, that's easy for me and you to say because we don't own a barbecue concept, right? We didn't get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start the smoker, and get it up to temp and load the meat in there.
Smoke your meats, for 6 to 8 hours,
and turn it every few hours and baste it
and babysit,
right? And you might have seasoned it the night before, right?
Yep.
So those are all things that the general public doesn't see. Corporate clients don't see,
or they just take for granted,
and people looking to get into this industry don't see.
Yeah.
So unless they have someone to tell them, they're going into it blind. And I think that that's why a lot of concepts fail. And it's not necessarily the concept that fail, but it's the person behind the concept.
So I think that we really gathered a lot of information from that perspective. So how do you get somebody to be able to have a successful concept or to be able to have a successful truck?
So we've talked about work ethic, right? Work ethic is probably the top priority on the list. The second thing I would say is identifying a concept and building a brand around it. So, and what I mean by that is you got to know what you're going to serve, not the individual items, but how people are going to identify you as a concept when you go out onto the truck. or when you go out onto the road, I see a lot of trucks jump in, and it's, Tommy's food truck or Adam's food truck, right? Or
Uncle Jay's barbecue.
Right. Well, at least it's got barbecue. Like, that it's barbecue, right? But Uncle Jay's, food truck.
Yeah, but when I say that, like Uncle Jay's barbecue, and then it's Uncle Jay holding a set of tongs.
Right. Yeah. See, and it works for some, but it's not something that I would hedge a bet on.
No.
Right. So, when you're in that
Hey,
initial,
my first concept, I was holding my tongs in my photo.
Yeah. Where's your truck at?
yeah.
It was for other reasons. We were fairly successful.
Yeah. So,
We touched on that.
going back to what can make you successful in this industry, it's really about identifying, what it is that you want to serve, or identifying a concept and then building a brand that is going to resonate with people, and that people are going to be able to, identify you in the marketplace,
And not putting yourself in a specific niche. I think we identified that. Because when you niche your cuisine, then you're stuck.
Right. When you're in this industry and when you're looking to get into this industry, there's a lot of us that are willing to help other people. And I think that, for someone that's looking to get into it, go to a food truck, talk to the food truck owner, ask questions. There are some assholes in this industry, but the majority of us are just hardworking people trying to make a living. And we're willing to help others because we know how hard it is to get into this,
And don't get discouraged.
and to be successful.
Don't get discouraged if you talk to one food truck owner and that one food truck owner is an asshole.
Right.
Like, just continue.
Yeah.
And I would make sure like that is on your list, to say, let me ask 10 food truck owners, or let me talk to 10 food truck owners.
Right.
Give yourself a number. Don't say I'm going to go talk to one or two.
Right.
Give yourself, a good amount. And I think 10 is a really
That way
good
you can
amount.
get a good
I mean, there's
consensus
hundreds.
of-
There's hundreds here in our market.
Yeah.
So just put 10. I'm going to go and I'm going to set out to talk to 10 different food truck
How about
owners.
this? Download BFT, Best Food Trucks app. Look on there. I promise you there is a food truck that's near you, and figure it out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Talk to
I think
them.
that's one of the great segues into our sponsorship today. Thank you guys for listening to this podcast. We are sponsored by bestfoodtrucks.com. So if you're looking for any of your food truck needs, or you're looking for your favorite truck out there, make sure you go check out bestfoodtrucks.com.
So I'm going to make sure that Matt Geller gets that clip there, because let's talk about some of the things that someone that's looking to get into the industry. You mentioned them going out and talking to food truckers. So what are some of the questions they should be asking?
Do you love what you're doing?
Okay.
That's an honest question.
How so?
Do you love what you're doing?
Well, I think in order to be successful, you have to. You can't be in this business and not be passionate about
It's
some aspect of it.
Yeah, it's a loaded question though.
Yeah.
Because somebody were to ask me that,
Yeah.
I would definitely have a different answer.
So you don't love what you're doing.
I love what I'm doing. But you always got to have the end goal. My end goal is what keeps the drive there.
Okay. So your end goal is not a food truck.
My end goal is not a food truck.
So what is it?
My end goal would be brick and mortar.
Okay.
Or my end goal could still be food truck, but me not on the truck.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Continuing to grow brands and curate brands
Yep.
to where your businesses now can run on their own and you can actually sit back and now manage.
So you are passionate about the business,
The business.
not necessarily the truck itself.
Yeah.
Or not an individual truck, right?
It's the business aspect.
And I think that's a great point, because I think that's why we are able to align so well and we connect so well. And I'm speaking for Tommy as I say this as well. But I think that all three of us, our passion lies within the business and being entrepreneurs, chasing numbers, growing our businesses, daily. We look at numbers all
Every
day long.
Every day.
Yeah, not just once either. So
day, all
like
day.
our square dashboards are our best friends, right? We're seeing, are we comping against last year's numbers or yesterday's numbers or last
And
week's
I'm looking at
numbers?
everybody else's numbers. because I want to know where I'm at.
Okay, so
Well, that's also a great question. That's also a great.
so where do you
question.
get those numbers?
I get those numbers from our BFT because I'm privy to our trucks. When I say our numbers, I'm talking about our trucks.
Yeah, our 3 trucks.
I always want to know how I'm doing up against Latin or how I'm doing up against Wingbox.
Well, you want to know what you're doing against the competition as well, right? Or not the competition, but just other food trucks.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you guys do, and which is great, is, you guys send out the quarterly updates.
Yeah.
So what is the business like quarterly? So when you guys send those out from AAFT, I have the opportunity now to see where I'm lining up and where I'm matching up against
the averages.
Everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
is my average strong enough, or is my average the same as all these other guys? Like,
Well, and we break it down too to where you can see what the top 10 truck averages are. Not the individual numbers, but what that whole average is. So,
and that's the thing. Like, you can't sit there and be like, I'm not worried about nobody else. I'm only worried about myself. Like, at the end of the day, if that's your mentality and that's your saying, you're never going to be successful. You don't think that Apple is looking at Samsung and Microsoft and seeing what they're doing and what's coming out next, or how popular their phones are, or what new concept they're going to create.
Right.
They're creating this flip phone, or we got to create, like, that's it's just idiotic to say.
Well, I have a question for that guy who walks up to a food truck just to interview him and see, what it is. Okay, ask them, do they love what they do? But how transparent are you with other food trucks?
in terms of what numbers? Well, I mean, I think that you're getting into some sticky areas there, right? Because a lot of people aren't transparent. I mean, at the end of the day, and they don't have to be. That's why they got into business for themselves. It's nobody else's business what you're making, how much you're making, how successful you are. But there's a flip side to that as well, right? So, and the flip side to that is, what about these, someone that's looking to get into the industry, right? Mm-hmm. Or what about your peer that asks you, hey, how was this event the last time you did it? And you either overinflate your numbers and say, hey, I did $3,000 at that event. Or you say, oh, it's not a very good one because you don't want that truck going to that event, right? But in essence, you're hurting whoever it is that's asking you that question.
100%.
And not just hurting that person, but hurting the industry as well, right? The local industry. Because now, let's say that food truck, didn't pack enough food because you told them that, hey, it's not an event that I do again, right? And they did it anyway. They didn't listen to you because maybe they asked 5 other food truckers, and those 5 other food truckers said, hey, yeah, it's a great event. Go ahead and do it. But what if they didn't pack enough? And now they show up to the event, they work it, and they run out of food halfway through. And in your mind, you're saying, oh, well, that's too bad for that truck, right? But now what has occurred is whoever booked that truck is now looking at it and saying, you know what? Our food truck's really the right option because they can't hold enough food. And maybe that wasn't the case at all. Maybe that truck didn't pack enough because you told them not to. So, transparency. So, Adam, I know you're super passionate about this, right? Because you are probably one of the most transparent people that I know in business. Why share someone your numbers, or why tell them, what you do?
Why not? Like, does it hurt you to tell somebody your numbers?
Egos, maybe.
I mean,
when it comes out, because I was one of those people.
Transparency. Transparency
open.
Is so big to me because of, like you said, like it can help. The only benefit to transparency is help, right? If I have a crappy shift and somebody comes to me and say, hey, how was that shift? It was crappy. Like, I'm only helping them because now they know what to expect if they get booked for that shift. Or if I tell them, hey, like I did $3,000 at this shift. Now they know this is going to be a really busy shift. Like, transparency hurts nobody.
It doesn't. It helps people out because you know what? Not every shift is going to be a banger.
But aren't you afraid another truck's going to find out that a location's really good, or that a client is willing to spend a lot of money and try to steal that client or that location from you?
Absolutely not. I am not focused and or worried about another food trucker, quote unquote, coming in and stealing one of my locations or coming in and stealing one of my clients, because the product that I put on the road every day and how I run my truck every day shows up for itself.
Okay, what if they undercut your price?
If they undercut our price, it's like that's one of the things that we were talking about before. That's huge in our market, right? Is people going behind and undercutting the price. But at the end of the day, all you're doing is hurting the entire market, and you're gonna hurt yourself too. Because say you go in, say the standard is 15, and now you're coming in and you're doing it for 12, right? So now you do it for 12, Johnny has to do it for 12, Emily has to do it for 12, right? So now you just created a new standard. So now next year, when a new client comes in, they want it for 10. Now you got to go back and do it for 10 now. So you're just continuing to diminish and diminish and diminish your brand and hurt the overall just because you want to be greedy just to make that, just to get that one account.
Well, maybe it's not just greed. Maybe they just can't compete with you on a dollar per dollar level. And they have to, I mean, the only competitive advantage they may have is price. So with transparency, it's one of those things that not everyone's going to be transparent. You just have to accept it for what it is. But that's why you've got to use your other resources. You've got to be able to tap into, food truck pages or food truck groups. Because even though, I mean, if you think about it, on a daily basis, how many food truckers do you interact with, right? You really don't unless you show up to a location that's got multiple trucks at a location. But outside of that, you're booking work individually, you're booking work directly through a client, or you're booking work through an organizer. So when you're working with an organizer, that's easy. You just say, hey, what's the average at this location? And if it's a good organizer, they're going to give you a straight answer on that. But when you're working directly with a client, sometimes clients lie too, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
I was going to tell you that. And when you say clients, it's like some of these communities book their own food trucks, right? So they use whatever HOA contact that they have, and we'll say that is that is the client, right? Because that's who you communicate with. And there's been a couple instances where we've gone out to a community, and I have personally asked the client or the HOA liaison, whoever's there, how good is this event, or how much did the previous truck do? And they give me numbers that are way off from what I end up doing that night, and it could be cuisine type, could be truck type, could be branding, could be marketing. But if you've had trucks there, dozen times, you have an average already, and your average is way off from what you're telling me.
Or it just depends on what's relative, which is, what is good? What does good mean?
The biggest one that I think that we can reference for you is the schools, right?
Okay.
Or like the colleges, the schools, or Tammy's dentist office, that's downtown, right? There is 15, 20 businesses here in our plaza. And everybody would love for your truck to come out here. There's 300 people, this and that. Have you guys had food trucks there before? Oh, absolutely. They have done great. When somebody says, hey, they've done great. Exactly. Hey, they've done great. Or, hey, they sold out. Or, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
What define great?
Define sold out.
Define sold out.
Right.
Because my sold out is $5,000, right?
Right.
Because my truck is packed to do $5,000. So did that truck pack to do $5,000, or was that packed, or is that truck packed to do $800, and that's where they sold out at?
Right.
Well,
and so is $800 a great night
for a dinner shift?
For any shift.
For a lunch shift, yeah, I would say $800 is probably is going to be your running average right now in the market and the climate that we're in, with businesses starting to get back into office and with some locations starting to open up. Like if your lunch is an $800 average, that's a good lunch right now.
It's a great lunch.
Great lunch
for a lot of trucks,
yeah.
Right?
I just think that we look at it a little bit differently because we
were pampered. We
were pampered in the aspect of we had big corporations that we worked for that their entire office building, 2,000, 2,500 people were back, and that's what we were working out of.
And that was partial.
Well, I think it depends on your business model too. So we've built a business based on volume. Right. So our trucks are high volume trucks, and not every truck in the market is going to be high volume. There's a lot of trucks that are niche trucks, or there's a lot of food truck operators that it's their husband and their wife. Yep. It's a husband and wife team working a truck, and really they only need to go out and make $400 or $500 and they're profitable. Right. But for us at $400 or $500 on a shift, we're still underwater. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a common misconception in our business. It's, that every food truck should be happy with a certain amount of orders or a certain dollar amount. because we're all different. Our organizations are built differently, or our business models built differently. And that goes for cuisine type, that goes for size of the truck, that goes, there's a lot of variations, or there's a lot of variables that go into whether a shift is successful or whether that truck deems that shift successful. And that's why averages are so important, because as an individual food truck owner, if I know what the average is, I can decide whether that average works for my business or not. And averages aren't going to tell you the whole story, because a lot of the times, we show up and something happens where it's an off night, or an off day, or, we show up to a corporate office and they had a catering that day that no one knew about. They ordered pizza for a whole floor, right? Those kinds of things happen. But those are the exception to the rule. If you know what the general rule is and you have data to show you, hey, this is the average, then you can make intelligent business decisions. And I want to go back to something that you said earlier, where a client says, hey, every food truck that we've had sells out here, and we're just looking for more food trucks. Well, why are you looking for more food trucks? If every food truck that you've had, you're telling me you've had food trucks for a year, and every food truck sells out, like usually you wouldn't have a problem finding a food truck.
No, absolutely not.
Right? Because food trucks want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
I know that every location that I've ever gone to that we've performed, not even sold out, like as long as we've made money, you make a profit, you want to go back, right? Because that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
So I would just err on the side of caution if you're a food truck owner and you've got a client telling you that, hey, I've got a lights out location, right? We're going to sell you out, and they're calling you. Right? Unless you've built a brand where it's desirable and people have been asking for your brand, that's a different story. But I can't tell you the amount of phone calls that I get from small offices or small business parks or apartment complexes that say, hey, every truck that we host sells out. And it's just not true, right? Because the minute that you ask for a minimum, they go, they either say, what's that? Or we don't do that. Well, why don't you do it? If you are so confident that your location is so good, why can't you give me an $800 minimum? An $800 minimum for me is 40 tickets. So you can't guarantee me that 40 people are going to come buy something from my truck, but you tell me that every truck that shows up sells out? Something doesn't add up there.
Yeah.
Right?
The confidence level.
Transparency level.
Transparency. So it all goes back to transparency. So, when you're doing business in an environment that is not transparent, or you can't see all of the data or all of the stipulations or everything that encompasses making a business decision, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable making a decision, right? Whether that's booking a location or, deciding whether or not to work with an organizer, or any decision, working with a vendor, buying something from a vendor, from a supplier. Like if that person or that second party is not comfortable being completely transparent, something's wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? And you probably shouldn't do business with that person, whether it's an organization or a vendor or a location or a contact. If the data's not in front of you and you don't have access to all of the data before you make a business decision, that might be the decision that determines whether your business goes forward or not. Because how many trucks are just a few shifts away from going out of business?
A
lot, especially in today's climate, right? So, and I think that that's what people fail to realize, and organizers and people who are looking for food trucks fail to realize that you're playing with someone's livelihood. When you call an individual food truck and you're saying, hey, I want you to come out to my event and I want you to do $3,000 in sales, that $3,000 for that food trucker, if they show up and they pack that much and it doesn't go well, that might be the difference on whether they continue to operate or go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a solid statement.
Absolutely. So that's why, as a food truck owner, you've got to do everything you can to protect yourself, to protect your business, right? Establishing minimums, working with organizers that have a reputation and they're willing to stand behind a location that they're sending you to, right? Because it's not just enough to tell me, hey, you're going to do great at this location, right? But what if I don't? Right? Am I still paying you a fee?
Yeah. What's my safety?
Right. Am I paying you a fee on $500 in sales? Am I paying you a fee on $300 in sales? Right? What do you have into it? Right? And if you're not comfortable asking those questions, or if the organizer is not comfortable answering those questions, then you shouldn't work together.
Yep.
And I say that as a food truck owner and as a food truck organizer.
Yeah. It's a solid statement. At the end of the day, transparency is it's always going to get you what you need. It's always going to get you what you need. You got to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Blew my mind. And it wasn't until I physically started to see myself being uncomfortable with change before I actually understood it fully. The moment that I started embracing change, that uncomfortableness, that uncomfortable feeling of always getting a paycheck through corporate America, right? Because in making that change from 15 years of corporate to jumping into something that you put your life savings in.
Well, you're not always going to get a paycheck.
Exactly.
When you own a food truck, you are not always going to get a paycheck. And I think that, people fail to realize that. And Adam, how many paychecks have you missed this year?
Lost count.
Right. So, just because when you talk about owning your own business, the misconception is, or the viewpoint that a lot of people have is, oh, well, that person owns his own business. He's got money. Right. And that's not always the case. And even if you're running a successful business, it doesn't mean that you have tens of thousands of dollars in your bank account, right?
No, because 9 times out of 10, if it's successful, it's because the money that you are making, you're putting right back into it.
You're investing, you're reinvesting, especially if it's if it's a young business, right? That's just starting. For example, I think our business is still very, very, very young.
Oh, extremely young.
We've been in business. We've said I've had the food truck for 4 years, but Jark Food Group was just formed a year ago.
Yeah.
Right. And now we've got 3 food trucks, right? And no money in the bank. And I think that the misconception is people see 3 food trucks and they go, oh, these guys are killing it, right? They're printing money, right? And I say that all the time, right? This concept's printing money, right? But the other side to that is, how much of an investment did you make to get there, right? So yeah, it's great to have 3 food trucks. But, either that was a long build, or you had to get in quite a bit of debt to put those trucks on the road. And just because you're going out and making $1,500, $1,600, $1,800 in a shift, that's just sales. That's not profit. Mm-hmm. And I think people see those numbers sometimes and they're going, oh, wow, $1,800 in a shift. I can do that. Me and my wife can go out and do $1,800 in the shift with the neighbor Cassie. She'll be our cashier. Well, yeah, but how much did you spend to get there?
Yep.
Right. So how much of that $1,800 are you putting in your pocket? Sometimes it's pennies on the dollar. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that what it boils down to, and where I'm trying to go with this, is if you get into this industry, know that it's not a get rich quick plan. And I think that there are very few industries that still exist where people get rich overnight, other than social media. I know social media right now is hot with that. But even social media people and influencers and stuff don't think that comes easy for them either. Nothing that is successful long term.
A lot of them, that didn't happen overnight.
Right. No. It doesn't.
A lot of these guys have been grinding out on IG and YouTube and stuff for years.
It's no different than our favorite music artists, right?
For years.
How many music artists do you watch their life stories and stuff, and they
sang in bars, in karaoke bars for 10 years. Yeah, subways.
Right. So, just know that if you're going to get into business for yourself, if you're able to do it, it's one of the most rewarding things you will ever do in your life. And I've experienced that. I truly believe it. but it's also one of the hardest things you will ever do.
Extremely taxing.
Yeah. It's taxing, and it's not only the sacrifices that you have to make, it's the sacrifices that you're going to ask your family members to make, that you're going to ask your partner or spouses to make, that you're going to ask your children to make. Because for you to truly be successful, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of work. And a lot of that sacrifice isn't just your sacrifice.
It's a team.
Absolutely.
It's a team effort.
I can't tell you how many weddings and funerals and parties and life events that I've missed and that we've missed, right, in order to make this thing work. You know, everyone goes on vacation for Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving and 4th of July. And a lot of those times we're underneath our trucks, right, fixing the things that we keep pushing off. Right? Or we're taking the inside of the trucks apart and replacing equipment, replacing floors, doing deep cleans. Because even though you clean every 10 days, there's always those cracks and crevices where things build up. And unless you take that off time, take that opportunity to go in and detail work or, you know, organize everything and do the detailed work.
Yep.
You know, you're falling behind. Mm-hmm. And in business, you're always falling behind. When you're a small business owner, you're always falling behind. Mm-hmm. It's really, really hard to get to a point to where you're ahead of the curve. And it's very few businesses that make it long term where you're able to get ahead of the curve. And I think that, you know, you got to take that into account before you jump into a food truck and before you decide that this is what you want to do, or before you jump into any small business.
I agree. 100%. Definitely.
So,
all right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning into the podcast today. We hope you thoroughly enjoyed yourself. Stay tuned for more to come. This is only the beginning, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Nice.
We'll catch you guys on the next one.